As you'll recall from our chat on switches, you can have multiple switches all sequentially being checked one after another inside of a loop, and oftentimes that's all you need to do. But sometimes you might want to have one switch being checked depending on the result of another. For example, suppose I wanted to have it so that if I pressed button number 1, it played this note. Press button number 2, it played this speech. It says good job. And when I hold down button 1 and button 2, then it says something else. Well, you couldn't really do that here because there's no way of saying if 1 and 2 are selected inside one of these switches, do this. So we need to cascade them. The way we do that, I'm going to hold down my mouse button, select this guy, and then I'm just going to drag it. I'm going to drag it down here, let's say. Grab the hand here and move it a little bit. Okay, so we're part of the way here. If button number 1 is not pressed, then it's going to check button number 2. If it's not pressed, it's going to continue. If it is pressed, it's going to say good job. And back up here, if button number 1 is pressed, it's not yet going to check button number 2. It's just going to say this. Or it's going to play that note rather. So we need to have another switch up here. So I'm going to grab another switch, put him up here, and we'll make that one check button number, touch sensor number 2 again. If it is not pressed, then we want to go ahead and play that sound that we were playing. But if it is pressed, then we want to say something else. Like, let's say we want to say good morning. And so now, if you see that button number 1 is pressed, it's going to go check number 2. If button number 2 is pressed, then it's going to say good morning. If button number 2 is not pressed, it's going to play that note. And similarly down here, button number 1 is not pressed, checks number 2. Number 2 is pressed, it's going to play the thing that says good job. And if it's not pressed, it's going to continue on, and around it goes. You can get very complicated with these and nest these as deep as you'd like to nest them. You'll note that it's easy to kind of lose track of what's going on, so you really have to play computer. You really have to say, well, gee, if I was the computer and I saw button number 1 pressed, what would I do? And I'd go up here and then I'd say, well, okay, now what would I do? And I'd do this. When you start nesting these, this is a good time to start thinking about going into flat view. So if I selected this, I turn off flat view. Now it makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. With this tab, I can see what's happening when the touch sensor is pressed, and with this tab, I can see what happens when it's not. It's kind of up to you, and also depends on kind of how big your screen is, which way you want to go.